All right, let's get some analysis from Lincoln Mitchell from New York. He's an adjunct associate professor of political science at Columbia University. Professor, I'm wondering about this U.S. ban on oil imports from Russia. I know President Biden is hoping Americans will see paying more for gas as part of their patriotic duty, but do you think Americans will feel that way? Many red states, for example, tend to be more rural, meaning people will drive more and will be bearing the brunt of the higher costs. Is that going to hurt Biden in the midterm elections?
Americans are not gonna say, well, this is because of the war that we're paying more for gas. It is not going to help Biden in the midterm elections. And it's not just people in rural states. If you fly, if you buy products that have to move across the country or have to get here from somewhere else, you're paying more because the higher price of gas is folded into that. One thing I should point out here is that gas has been going up in the United States, the price of gas, since before this war. So it's not just because of banning Russian gas that we will continue to see prices go up. We don't, most of our gas in the United States we produce on our own. About 7% of what we import is from Russia. So this is not a huge part of it. Gas will continue to go up. The Republicans will continue to use that against Biden, and it will not help him in the midterm elections. However, we are seeing that most Americans approve of how Biden is handling this crisis, and that will help him and the Democrats. He's not on the ballot. That will help the Democrats in the midterm.
What about the impact of this conflict in Ukraine beyond Ukraine's borders? Do you see this causing a realignment in world powers, and if so, in what way?
Well, it is a little too early to tell, but we are seeing some inklings of this. The biggest is how Russia, through its invasion of Ukraine, has unified so much of Europe against Russia. Hawkish elements and the more hawkish countries, for example, Poland, the Baltic states, elements here in the United States, have been trying to push the rest of Europe to a more strong anti Russian position. And Putin accomplished that in about 48 hours, beginning on February 24th. What that means is that Russia is going to have to find other markets for the extractive products that it produces, most notably fossil fuels. The natural place for that is China. India also, who notably did not vote with the United States on the Security Council vote a couple of weeks ago. So India is also going to be a place where Russia sells a lot of gas. So what I think how this aligns, how this changes is it forces Russia to find markets outside of Europe. Now, Europe is important economically for Russia and also kind of as part of the identity of Russia as being part of Europe. Well, if we're not doing business with Europe, it's going to be less European. This will also push Putin into a more, we've already seen this tremendously, push Putin to be more authoritarian, more repressive, so that he can hold on to power. And that will in turn make him closer to his most powerful authoritarian patron, and that is China.
We saw a flurry of diplomatic efforts in the weeks leading up to this and in recent days, and nothing so far seems to have worked. Do you think Moscow is just unwilling to negotiate? I mean, what would Putin stand to gain?
My fear here is that this war will end when Russia decides it wants this war to end. Russia has nothing really to gain here by negotiating. It has done the damage. So it can't say, okay, well, we'll stop the war and you'll be nice to us again. That's not going to happen. My sense is that Russia, this war has already been gone on 2 or 3 weeks. Most people thought it'd be a week or so. Russia will continue to bombard Ukraine, to bomb Ukraine, to, as the president suggests, I hope this doesn't happen, to raise Ukrainian cities until it feels it's done enough damage to Ukraine that Ukraine can really not function, and then it will walk away. That is my fear. And and from the Russian perspective, that's the only card they have left to play. So I don't expect negotiations to get anywhere. And look, I'm sometimes wrong, and I certainly hope I'm wrong on this one.
What do you think Putin's motivations are? Do you think that this is about NATO, and do you think it's important to understand his motivations?
It is important to understand Putin's motivations, and it would have been very important to understand it a few months ago before this war. My sense is two things. NATO is a bit of a feint here by Russia. What this is really about, and what this has always been really about, is regime preservation. Putin's goal is to stay in power. And we need to understand that, and we needed to understand that going in. Too frequently in the West, the explanation is Putin is a madman. Putin is crazy. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to speak to Putin's mental health, although he doesn't seem like a paradigm of mental health and stability. But he's not crazy, and he's not totally irrational. What he wants to do is stay in power. And a Western-leaning, functioning, prospering democratic Ukraine, which is not what Ukraine was before this war, but it was the direction in which it was going, is a tremendous threat to Putin. And he could not let that happen. The NATO issue, obviously, Putin doesn't want Ukraine in NATO, but everyone knew before this war started that Ukraine wasn't getting into NATO anytime soon. You don't go to war for something you already have.
All right, we'll leave it there. Adjunct Associate Professor Lincoln Mitchell joining us from New York. Thank you for your time.